I can't climb up to the top. No, but I can't. Okay, I can do it.
Hello? Hi. What do you mean, what's the password? I just sent you the link. Did you actually register for it? Yeah, that's what's gonna have to happen. Let me send you or just try the link that I just sent you. Yeah. It's not. It's on Zoom. But yeah. So here's the password. I'm sending the password now. So I sent you the link. I mean, it's a URL. No, not really. I mean, you sent me the original login for the Zoom, so. Hang on.
658832. So I'm going to try it. But that, okay, wait a minute. This is terrible. We can't even get in.
Did you email that to me?
What?
The password?
Yeah, but if this is the password, well.
No, that's the password to the room.
Oh. Okay. Well, I did not get the I just got your email, but it didn't have the link to it. So there was another link.
I sent that in the email a few minutes before that.
That one I didn't get. Just send both of us the link and the password. And sorry about that.
No problem. I'm trying to figure it out. But you may have to sign in.
Right, Patty's trying to. Yeah, we're trying to figure it out. Are you with Cindy? Yeah, she sent me the password to get in, but I don't have the link.
Well, I have the link. I just said 10 minutes ago, but now I went in with the password, but it's still not working with the link. So
What do you mean it's not working? Are you in the waiting room?
no, wait, okay, so this is where I am. So I got the email from Nancy, right?
Hello. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I see some of you coming in now. Thank you so much for being here for this very special event. We'll kick off here in just a few moments, but this is one of the first times that we've used Zoom for an interactive session here / training. And it's going to be very exciting. And so, you're welcome to turn on your camera as well. There's going to be some great opportunities for us to interact together around this training material. Just to let you know that this is being recorded, so we'll be able to share it with our friends who have registered, but we're not necessarily able to be with us here today. So let's just kick it off here. So my name is Dr. Cindy Banyai. I am the founder of the Institute, and I'm not the founder for Institute of Organization Development's over there, the founder of Banyai Evaluation and Consulting, and I've coordinated this session for us here today, and we have some amazing guests. Let me get my slides up and running here too. This session here, we've decided to bring us together to have an opportunity to share some experience and knowledge that myself and my colleagues, Dr. Nancy Zentis and Patti Dammann, have in this area of systems change. We see a lot of things going on in our country and our world, and this is some areas that we've worked in quite a bit. So we're very excited to be able to have this opportunity to share some of our knowledge with you in this very, very galvanizing time for us. So our session here today is Be the Change, Organize to Facilitate Change. And this is exactly the space that some of us have been in, and we want to share this with you. So welcome everybody. Like I said, I am Dr. Cindy Banyai. I'm also running for Congress, but this is a side thing for me here. My main business is actually doing this work in institutional organization and community change. So I'm so happy to be able to share this knowledge with everyone here today. So this is me. There's my little business logo here. For those of you that have heard me talk about being a small business owner here in Southwest Florida, this is it. The Banyai Evaluation and Consulting is the company that I've ran for the past 11 years that has focused mostly helping nonprofits and governments in our area here become more efficient and effective, doing community research, doing community organizing, and then feeding that back into the process of decision making, policy making. So this has been my bread and butter here, and I'm facilitating this session today with two of my fantastic colleagues at my client, the Institute of Organization Development. So we have with us here today Dr. Nancy Zentis. She is a CEO and founder of the Institute of Organization Development. She's one of our special guests. I'm going to flip to the next screen so you can go ahead and read through all of the amazing experience that she's had. But I'd like Dr. Zentis to tell us a little bit about herself and her experience in this systems change space. So Dr. Zentis, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Welcome everyone. Thanks so much. It's a privilege to be here. And as you all know, we're in a difficult time and people are experiencing so much change. And over the years, I have been involved in working with many organizations who have dealt with constant ongoing change, many in crisis. Sometimes it was for good change. Others, it was for, a tumultuous change. And so we just wanted to share with you our kind of, some of the tools that we've used to help the many organizations. I am originally from Michigan, but I lived for more than 30 years in Southeast Florida. And I did a lot of work with many nonprofit groups in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach and Martin County. And we were involved in a huge initiative, both Patricia and I. And we helped, and this was in the last recession that we had when during the housing and mortgage crisis. So we are excited and, sad that we're all having to go through this, but kind of my thought for the day that when I woke up and I just thought, let's thrive, instead of survive, let's thrive. So that's kind of my message and the theme for the day. And if you'd like to reach out to me and learn more about what we do offer online certification programs for people who are interested and love the field of organization development, which has been around for more than 70 years. It's based on the work of Kurt Lewin, and this is what Patty and Cindy and I teach to people around the world, and we even travel to other countries We do a lot of work in Ghana. So please feel free to, let's be connected. You can join me on LinkedIn, email me. Love to share and share anything that we can to help you in your role as a community leader.
Thank you, Dr. Zentis. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, it was just about this time last year that we were in Ghana helping to teach some of these very same things to community leaders in the northern part of Ghana and Tamale. So in case you're wondering how applicable this is to the work, I mean, it is absolutely applicable to everyday organizing and everyday community leadership for change. So it's now my honor to introduce Patricia Dammann, Patti Dammann. She is one of the other leaders of the Institute of Organization Development as the Vice President of Programs. She also has an amazing body of experience helping organizations and communities through change. So I'm going to flip again to her very extensive resume here as well. And give her the opportunity to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her work in this area. So Patti.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you. So great to be here. And when Cindy started talking about the work that she wanted to do and how she wanted to share some of the tools and techniques that we use in organization development, I thought, what better opportunity to do that? I've had the wonderful experience to work with probably every type of organization that you could think about, working with people that want to change, big teams, small teams, senior leaders, people that just want to make a difference in their community. I even work with condo associations so they could put together a list of norms so they could all get along. And you can imagine what that's like. So I'm here today. I have a little bit of a healthcare background as well, which has made me really kind of understand a little bit about what our healthcare community is going through, and also had the opportunity as a child to live in the South in the 60s and experience some of the big major changes and disruption that was going on then. And here we are today. And I'm excited that I can share what I know. I'm excited that I can be with you today, and definitely want to invite you to ask questions, participate, and think about what you can do to thrive in your community. So thanks, Cindy.
Thanks, Patti. Thanks for that. And I just wanted to give a small pitch too for our partner organization here, the Institute of Organization Development. So if you see this, if you are really interested in this, this is where you would go for continuing education in the space of organization development and change. We have a whole network, the GIODN network of people who are working in this space around the world that is also an opportunity to learn and connect. And we have a lot of resources there above and beyond what we're going to be sharing with you today. So we just wanted to honor our partners for being here by telling you a little bit more about their organization. So we'll continue forward here with just talking a little bit about what the purpose overall of this session is. So what we're hoping here to do today is to introduce community change and what it is and why it's important, and then give you some tools to get you started on it. So we, just so that you know, we kind of decided that this should be a pretty high level. We don't necessarily know how much experience you have, but I do have a little poll here, if I can figure out where it is on the setup that you can, that we're going to give you here to tell you, so you could tell us a little bit about yourself. Oh, there it is. But so we wanted to keep it high level, understanding that a lot of people have kind of stepped up into this leadership space where they may have not been there before. And we wanted to provide some introductory tools and tips for you. So just keep that in mind. And if you leave the session wanting more, trust us, there is more. There is more to be had. But we just wanted to give you a little bit of, a taste to get you started here. So I'm going to launch a poll here just so you can tell us. This one is going to be anonymous. So just tell us a little bit where you are in your experience. And hopefully this is going in front of you so you can see it. Just tell us what your experience, how much experience do you have in community organizing? Do you have lots, a fair amount, none, some? This will also help us calibrate our conversation here today. And thank you for some of you who are joining us too. This is, like I said, our team, we typically do a lot of our work on GoToWebinar, and we're trying to pilot some of these more interactive sessions on Zoom. So fingers crossed that we can have the technology work 100% for us. But if we have a few hiccups, we do hope that you'll give us some grace in that. So we're working well so far. We got about 81% of you, so we'll give you just another 5 seconds here to finish that poll. It looks like just about everybody voted, and so I'm going to go ahead and end this poll. So it looks like we have, there's seems to be a lot of folks here in the middle. So 60% are on the some. You've done a little bit, 20% are on no, and then 20% are on lots. So our friends who are here, who are in the lots space, please feel free to jump in and add your expertise here, because that's what we're hoping to have. I believe that there is a place for you if you click on participants, where I think you might be able to raise your hand, or you can unmute yourself as well. Hopefully we can stay muted, but if there's an opportunity to share, if you can signal to me or put in the chat, we'll try to monitor that as well, because we do want to have your participation in this. So our friends who have done this lots, please add in your experience as we move forward as well. So great, thank you for everybody. So that hopefully will help our presenters too to calibrate a little bit more. So again, why are we here? We are here to learn together. And myself and Dr. Zentis and Patti Dammann, we wanted to be able to share some of this experience with you, but we also wanted to give you the opportunity to help tailor some of these things for perhaps a piece of community leadership that you've stepped into. So please, again, you know, we can have this be a little bit of interaction too. So if you have a specific question or idea, you can put it into the comments and the chat, and also we can look to unmute you and join in the conversation that way. So one of the things that we're looking at here too is to introduce the community change. So what is this change? What is community change and why it's important? I can say for myself is I have been working in this space of community change for a long time, going back in community development to my early days in working overseas in poverty alleviation. And so really, I picked this graphic to help us explain that a little bit more, because it's really about taking the things in our community that we don't necessarily want or need anymore, or that we don't like or cause problems for people, and then finding a way to move towards something that works more for the people where they are today. So that's what community change means for me. And it's important because we do need to make change. We're not in a status quo position all the time where that is going to be okay, moving forward infinitely. We do need to change and grow on this. Patti and Nancy, do either of you want to make some introductory comments on community change?
No, I think it's an exciting time. I'm really happy that people are coming forward and talking about their areas that they're passionate about, and they want to do something about it. So what I am concerned about, because I've been around for a long time, and I lived in Detroit when we had riots in the in the 60s, and then we had the Vietnam War protests. Even my grandfather marched on Washington in the 20s in the labor movement. And then we had the civil rights. I was really involved in that one, because I wanted to have more rights for women to have, better working conditions and make more money. So luckily, I'm just so excited for everyone, and I'm pleased that people are willing to voice, because it's not always easy to voice your concerns and get involved. But believe me, it's one thing to march, and it's one thing to protest and get in the news. But the hard work begins when you start to take action. And really, that's what change is all about. It's coming up with a plan. And we're going to talk about that. And based on the work of Kurt Lewin, he called it plan change. And he escaped from Nazi Germany. His mother actually died in a concentration camp. And he came over to America and started to go and talk to universities, MIT in particular, about planned change and how we could borrow from the field of psychology and sociology and anthropology, and how we could use scientific principles. That's what we're going to share with you. Is it's not just something that we made up. It's been around for hundreds of years, and it's based on science. And that's what I think is really valuable. So I hope you're all ready to, to be the change and to be the leaders of change and get all the great people that are willing to do something, that are voicing, their dislikes or something that they'd like different. Not so much dislikes, but just something they can stand behind, and let's do something about it. This is an ideal opportunity, and I'm really excited about it. I don't know why that came up.
Thank you. Absolutely.
I can go crazy on this.
Yeah, no, that's why you're here, because you have this amazing depth of knowledge on this. But I think the point that is really important is that this is a good place where we do move from the where there's that energy around movements and protest into what's next, right? And I will say, as somebody who has also not only just been a steward in this space, but been a participant in this space through Occupy Fort Myers, in particular, that when you move through that, it's a hard thing. It is a hard thing to expect that everybody who's very, passionate about a cause and out protesting or speaking their mind, that they have they have right then and there the understanding of what needs to be changed moving forward. So that's one of the reasons why too we decided to present this to everybody, is to help crystallize that, to fortify the positions of the people who are very passionate about an issue so that they can actually make the change into the future. So thank you for bringing that up. So this is one of the models that Dr. Zentis had wanted to present to us. So maybe can you walk us through this model here?
Absolutely. This model is actually from John Carter. He wrote several books and does a lot of work around managing change. But I actually first saw this many years ago in the 80s when I was working I had a job, and we were trying to implement change in our organization. So there was a company, and it was called Scandinavian Airlines, and Jan Carlson changed this airline around by using this model. So I'm just going to explain it to you. So if you can think about it, it all starts with creating a sense of urgency. So, we had the coronavirus, and there was little known about it, and it hit us full bore in March. And really, whenever something like that happens, a crisis happens that we don't really know that much about, what we have to do is, as a leader, we have to start to create a sense of urgency. We have to communicate with everyone. This is what we need to do, and this is why. Like, here's what we know about it. Here's what we don't know about it. But this is what we do know. We had a playbook, right? Of course, but anyways, I'm not going to go deeper than that. Well, there was a playbook that told us exactly what to do. It told us how to code the emergency based on the depth of the emergency. So we saw numbers I'm not going to go deep into this, but we saw people rapidly becoming sick. So we knew we had to do something. All we knew, we didn't have tests, we didn't have equipment, we didn't have a cure. We knew we had to communicate to people and stand up and say, we need to isolate. The only way that we can stop the infection right now is if we isolate, and then we learned that we had to cover our mouths. And that was that really was what we needed to do until we could learn more about the situation. So you have to, as a leader, you have to stand up and say, we know that this is happening. This is what we need to do. We need to rally around it. All right. Then you've got to form a powerful coalition. So you have to get people who are willing to be involved. That's really key. And when it's a nonprofit, believe me, that's the hardest thing to do. You have to run a business. You actually become a business leader. I learned this when I was a president of many nonprofits. And you've got to get people who are willing to support you and willing to do work. And you've got to get them to commit to it. And this is where, you've got to even be effective at leading teams, assigning roles and responsibilities. We're going to talk more about it. And then as the leader and as the, with your stakeholders, you're going to create a vision of what is success going to look like. So here's where you have a vision and a mission. You come up with a vision statement that, what we want to do is we want to be activists for whatever our change initiative is. So you'll have that in your heart, and your values will drive your vision. So what is important to you and your team, that will drive your vision. And then your mission is how you're actually going to accomplish what it is you're setting out to do. And next, what we have to do is we have to empower action. So we have to decide what actions do we want to take. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And empowerment means talking to everyone who wants to be a part of your initiative and finding out from them, what is it that they think will work? What do they know? What do they think will work? And collecting some data, finding out some best practices, so we're all about data. We're all about collecting data. Once we have some data and we can see what's important to people, so you'll have like a population or a sample size population, and you'll find out from the group, what do they think is important? That becomes your data, and you prioritize your action. So as a leader, you have to be careful that you are representing other people, not just your own ideas. And that's really important. So once that you all agree on what the actions are and what the priorities are based on what is it you can do, now what you're going to do is you're going to set that into an action plan. And in order to keep people involved and keep them motivated, you have to create quick wins. So you might want to look at what are some ways that you can find solutions to problems that are what we call quick fixes. Or just the fact that you formed and you have an action plan and you've got, and you have some mutual things that you're agreeing on, that can be considered a quick win. So you're throughout the whole process, make sure that you focus on what we're doing, what we've accomplished, what we're successful, and what remains to be completed. So you're always going to be celebrating. You want to celebrate and help people. That keeps people committed. Finally, what you want to do is you want to build on the change. So whatever you begin to change, you want to make sure that that's communicated, it's supported, other people know about it, you share your knowledge. It's part of what we call systems thinking. And based on the work of Peter Zengate, you want to make sure that you have you make sure that you have shared learning. So make sure everyone knows how you did it, what you did, the processes that you use. So you're building on the change to sustain the change. And then finally, this is where the hard work comes in, making it stick. So let's just say that you're able to influence and you're able to get, you're able to come up with a process that is a change in the way things have been done before. Now what we have to do is work on a plan for how can we make sure that it's sustainable, that people learn what it is that they need to know. If their roles change, their goals change, their playbook change, their responsibilities change. We have to work on helping to embed that change so that it sticks. So just quickly, that is what we're offering to you as a tool for planning community change. It's a great model. It's powerful, and it's been used for as long as I've known about it, since the 1980s. So I hope that you'll, if you want to know more about it, please feel free to reach out to us. But it's a great model, and it's a great way to start out and just putting something together.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. That's absolutely right. This is, this is a very comprehensive model. Obviously, it gets very in-depth in each part, and there's a lot of tools in each step, but I think it's helpful for us to have this framework of exactly what it takes. And yeah, it is a long process, and it's also not necessarily linear. Sometimes you do have to kind of go back and continue and re-loop. So that's also helpful, I think, when you're being a leader in this space, because it's not all just, it's not just forward, and then we have the change and then we're done. But let's talk a little bit about what you as a change maker. So those of you who are here with us have stepped up and decided to be part of this session here today because you saw yourself as somebody wanting to engage in community leadership and wanting to help lead the change. So what does that really mean? What does that mean in terms of your roles? Well, these are some places that we saw you, the change maker, being able to intersect. So one is being the organizer, so the person that really puts it all together, right? Also you, the change maker, visionary, looking out and into the future as to, you know, what's happening now and what you would like to see be different. Have to inspire others. That's part of this work as well, making sure that you are having people get on your side, get on board with what you're trying to do. You have to be a facilitator. So you have, that's why we actually included in this training some tips for facilitators, because it's an absolutely critical tool for being successful in this space. You have to build teams, so have to know how to get people in and build that space. You have to be a storyteller, so you have to be able to communicate that back out, and that's also part of the inspiration and the team building, as well as making it stick. The transfer of knowledge, so being able to transfer the information that you have or other groups have to different groups of people, that's a key component of this. Coach, so you're going to have to be able to coach other people on what they need to do in certain spaces, also keeping in mind that you can't do everything. So you're going to have to work to enable other people in your group to do certain things, and that's a major role as a leader here, and you the change maker. And then also what we're going to give you some tips on later today is being a conflict resolver. So that's going to be a tool in the toolkit for you, but that's a role that you're going to have to, not everybody's always going to agree, even if you're kind of working in the same space. So have to have some ideas about how you're going to approach that. And just before we move to the next.
Yeah, there was I was thinking this, and then I saw a chat come up. Where does the money come in? So let me tell you, as the leader, that don't neglect that, okay? You have to be a salesperson as well. So I was a president of the Southeast Florida chapter of ATD in 2005, and we were going to put on an event, and the hurricane came, and literally I had my computer plugged into my husband's car. He had an adapter on the battery, and I was able to communicate with people. So they're like, "Where are we going to get the money?" I go, "Okay, you're going to make the ask." We call it make the ask. My friend Ellen Bristol of Bristol Strategy Associates, she specializes this, and she taught me. And this is what the failure of every nonprofit. They don't ask for money. They're afraid to ask for money. So there's a strategy for that. You can't just rely on donations. You've got to write letters to people, and you have to ask people. So what we did is we went out and we tried to get people to sponsor our event. And the first sponsor that I called on, like, just think about people who could benefit by being your sponsor. And so we were able to raise $10,000 in a couple weeks because we called on people. We went and visited. We just made the ask. We sold them on the benefit of the vision and the mission and the purpose of what we're trying to do. And you can write letters. In order to use like a donor software, then you have to be registered and have a 501c, which Cindy specializes in that. But if you're not there, rely on your family and friends, and maybe you have to sell something. Maybe there's a bag, a label, a button, whatever. But excuse me, but I get excited about it because I like making the ask. But just write that down, and then ask yourself and also your team members, your group members, how can we make the ask? Who would be willing? Start with your family and friends. That's the first one. So I'll turn it over to Cindy. She knows a lot about it.
I was going to say, no, definitely go to.
I don't have coronavirus, but I have a little tickle in my throat.
Glad to hear that. But so if you really need help with honing your ask, definitely go to Dr. Nancy Zentis. If you need help with the technical side of nonprofits, you come to me because I do that technical component of it. But she's absolutely right. You have to have a lot of these components ready though too. You have to have the vision. You have to know what you're trying to do, because that information helps you with your ask, right? So that's the other reason why we like to be in this space, to help groups and organizations figure out these things so that they can go and get money to fund the initiatives that they want to accomplish, where that needs to happen. So, but we fundamentally do agree that we need to have all of these pieces in place in order to make that happen. Money is absolutely a part. So Nancy did, she went through a lot of this, but, just again, to reiterate, you're going to have this sense of urgency, building the coalition, having the vision, remove the obstacles towards your goal, gain the support, establish your roles, quick wins, and gain team commitment. This is just another iteration of the model that Nancy presented. So we're getting on now, though, the next part here, this is where Patti is going to step in and talk about the tips for facilitating, because she is absolutely a maven when it comes to facilitating.
Thank you, Cindy.
A little bit about some of these things here that are helpful.
So once we get it all together, we made the ask, we have some sort of a structure. One of the tools that will help us to do that is, or skills I should say, is facilitating. And as you work with groups, you need to know how to manage groups. And one of the first things we always talk about is ground rules. So think about the fact you've got a group together, everybody's so excited to be there, they have passion, they want to be there, and they want to contribute. So the fact is that you need to manage that group that group energy, that group wisdom. And one of the ways we do that is through ground rules. Very simple. You get everyone to agree and you ask that question, how can we work together effectively? How are we going to be able to be a team together working on all these initiatives? And that's going to be through your ground rules. So one of the first things we always say is we want to hear from everyone, right? So we want people to participate. So we're going to be encouraging people as that facilitator, as that leader of the group. So that means we're going to make sure that we pull the quiet people out. We're going to make sure that we quell the manipulators, right? Or there are people that they definitely want to monopolize. And that's kind of their nature, but the ground rules will help manage that. We always want to make sure also that we're listening to others. So the ground rules will encourage you to do that. So not only do you want people speaking, you want people listening. And you want people listening to understand what others are saying. The other thing, and that has to do with sharing the airspace. So we said it before as far as participating, no domination, but we want to make sure that we're real clear about that. So that can be one of our ground rules as well. It helps to, again, put it right out there. We're going to talk and we're going to listen as well. And another way to do that is having one speaker at a time. You're going to want to monitor that because as you've probably been in groups where you have the little side conversations going on, people are excited. And sometimes even before saying it to the big group, they want to whisper it to somebody else. Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but if we have everybody doing that in the group, we're not going to be able to hear from everyone. So we quell that as well. The other thing that's extremely important is respect. We're going to hear things that are going to be off the wall, right? And that's kind of part of what we do when we brainstorm. We want creative ideas. We want off the wall. We encourage that. We want building on all those ideas. Some will be bad, some will be great. But we never, ever, ever put anybody down for that. We respect what they say, we listen, and we try to understand. And that's that final ground rule. Seek to understand and then be understood. So again, that whole balance there. So those are our ground rules. These are some sample ones. There are times where you might want to have those sample ones there and get everyone to agree to them. There are other times where you're literally going to ask people, what do they think the ground rules should be? And you write them down. That's probably the ideal way to do it. But let's face it, some people have never worked in groups before. So this, if you have a few that in your back pocket, that's going to help you to be more successful managing that group. So Cindy, why don't we talk a little bit about parking? Oh, how about that parking lot? And then actually go to working assumptions, and then I'm going to come back, because this kind of supports the ground rules. One of the organizations that Nancy and I both belong to is the International Association of Facilitators. We have learned so much over the years. We joined the organization in the 90s. They have done work all around the world, supporting nonprofits as well, all over the world. So they came up with their own set of ground rules, and I really love it, the working assumptions. And the first one starts off with everyone has wisdom. Love that one. Now that doesn't mean that everything that everyone says is going to be wise. We're going to hear some things that might not be that wise. However, with the second one, we need everyone's wisdom for the wisest result. We can't do it alone. If some people don't share, if we have a small group, we're not going to get to where we need to be. We need to capitalize on that wisdom of the group. So we need to make sure that everybody knows that. The other thing is that there are no wrong answers. I will say the corollary to that though, or the opposite, there are no right answers. It's only going to be the best that we can come up with where we are today. We're never going to get it perfect. The group that's there is the group we're going to work with. So remember that as well. And the fourth one might be kind of trite. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts, but it's so true. We know that groups working together, we talked about the coalition, that makes such a difference than a bunch of individuals doing things. So it is all about getting the group together. There has been research after research, evidence shown that groups come up with the best ideas. And finally, everyone will hear others and be heard. So again, we're going to listen, we're going to understand, and we're going to make sure that we also share what we need to share. So Cindy, so again, let's just kind of back up to the parking lot. I just wanted to do that because it really supports our ground rules. So,
Did he say something about being the groundskeeper though? Of the ground rules. That's really an important role.
Yeah.
It's hard to do.
Yeah. So two things I want to point. Thanks, Nancy, for reminding me. So with the ground rules, they just don't, we just don't write them and then we forget about them. We need somebody at each and every meeting to review the ground rules, say, and again, get everyone to say, are you going to agree to this? And literally, I have gone, when it's feasible, even when it's not, I'll do a big cheer. Do you agree to these ground rules? I try to get somebody in the group that will kind of monitor it, but ideally, I want us all to monitor it. But if you have one person in addition to the facilitator, that's a great way to do it. But let's get everyone in the group to say, you know what? If I hear somebody not respectful, then I'm just going to stop the action. And I'm going to say, you know what? Let's think about our ground rule. Be respectful. Listen to others. Or if there are people that are talking offline, go back to those ground rules. So thanks, Nancy and Cindy, for letting me talk about that.
Can I add to that, Patty?
You can.
As the facilitator, you might not be the leader. There might be another person who's the leader. But as the facilitator, you have to have the mindset on how you're going to manage the group. So what you're introducing to them are the democratic principles from Kurt Lewin, and you're also helping them to learn more about human interaction skills. So it's one thing to be effective working on accomplishing tasks, but you can't do it without having effective human interaction skills. So I just wanted to add a little bit of the theory behind it and why it's so important.
Thank you, Nancy. As we think about another tool that's going to help you be successful as far as managing that meeting as a facilitator, we have what's called a parking lot. And again, kind of taking us back to the meeting, there's a lot of things going on. You're going to be talking, there's hopefully going to be an agenda in which you outline the subject matter of what you're going to be discussing. People get excited and people get off track. And what the parking lot does for you, it allows you to capture those things that are not part of the agenda, but are important and need to be discussed at a later date. So we typically take a piece of flip chart paper, or if we're working remotely, we're gonna write down things when if somebody says something that's off, off topic, we're going to say, you know what, let's put that on the parking lot. We'll address that later because it's not germane to what we're talking about now. The beauty of it is at the end of the meeting, we give ourselves some time, we go back over the parking lot and we agree, do we need to take this forward? Do we need to make an action out of it? Or should we put it on our next agenda? So again, we always do something with those items on the parking lot. Very, very helpful for managing your meeting. All right.
I was gonna say absolutely, but I tried to mute myself. So good. So the next components here that we have are these tools for reflection, and this is something that Dr. Nancy Zentis will really love. So I'm going to hand it over to her now to tell us a little bit about some tools, our story, and dialoguing.
Okay. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Cindy. I just wanted to share with you, obviously, when you're going to have a meeting, you want to follow effective meeting guidelines. So this isn't in this, but I just want to add, you start off with an introduction, just like Cindy did, and then you explain the purpose of the meeting and you share the agenda so people know how much time is going to be spent and they know what you're going to be talking about and maybe what their roles are and their responsibilities. So again, this is all about you're trying to get people work together as a group, and it's sometimes hard to give up your own individual needs if you unless you have this structure. So you're going to have you're going to facilitate a really effective meeting structure, introduction, purpose, maybe expectations, rules, responsibilities, and you're going to share the agenda. And then what I like to do is open it up with an introduction activity. And this is a great one. I like my story, or you can call it your story. And we did this in Africa. And what we did was we asked everybody to write down, we gave them some cards. We used card sorting. And we gave them some, actually sticky notes work really well. And there's an app Cindy can share with you that you can use if you're going to have virtual meetings. And you write it down and you ask people, what was it that brought you here today? What was it that, what the reason why you wanted to be involved? If you could write 3 things down. And you could even say, was it a major event in your life? And you could actually put it on a timeline. So you've got some options here. And so, and date the events and put them up. So Cindy uses this in our meetings where you can put it on your screen and you can actually see everyone's cards, or you could do this on a large wall in a room. And I do love to meet with people personally, and I miss seeing everybody, by the way, but either way, it works really well. And then you have the participants share their story. And it's just a really great way to get to know each other, where they come from, things that they've experienced. And one time we had a group, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. And one of the ladies was from China. She was working in the United States, but she read her event. She said, "I'll never forget the time when I landed in the United States and I got off the plane." And she goes, "This is the first time in my life I could say what I think. I can voice my opinion." We literally just all had tears in our eyes. We were so emotional. She didn't know any of us, and she felt free to be able to say that. But it was the first time that she could, that she wanted to share the first time she could have a voice. I thought that was really powerful. And those are the kinds of stories that come out of this type of activity. And it's really amazing. And you never know what's gonna happen. You know, you never know. Sometimes it's a whole history of the organization. Sometimes it's people that have made accomplishments or being recognized by other people. Just so many powerful things come out of this event. It's an icebreaker. There's a lot of icebreakers. This is one of my favorites. I hope you get to use it. Do you want to go to the next one? My other favorite.
Go ahead.
I have lots of stories. You know, I'm an old lady, so I get to tell the stories. But it kind of helps you know how to use it and put it in context. So the next one's, I call it it's dialoguing. And dialoguing is really another effective tool to use. When you learn how to lead a dialogue group, it's amazing what's going to happen. So you've got to get some experience doing it, but there's also some rules for dialogue. But this is a technique that in order to get everybody to participate, this is a tool that we use, because you know, you're going to have people like me that just talk all the time, and then you have quiet people that, you know, they just sit back and let other people talk. So you want to get the wisdom of the group, because usually the non-talkers have the best ideas. So what you'll say is you'll go, let's do a stop, write, reflect, in a dialogue. And you ask everyone to stop for a minute and think about how they want to respond to the question that you're asking. So it might be that you might want to ask them, what are your reactions to the event that we just, or the event that we just heard, or maybe it's to my story. So you say, go ahead and write down your thoughts on a sticky note. You can use that app that Cindy uses again. You can say that depending on the size of the group, you can say you could write down 3 things separately on different cards, all right? And then what you'll do is you'll have them share with the whole group. So they reflect on it, and then they share in a dialogue what their thoughts were, what they experienced, what they found out to be true. And they share it with the whole group. And they do this in a non-judgmental way, so that the group genuinely listens to what it is the person's saying. They take it in, they let it resonate, and then maybe they want to add to it. Or maybe they want to say, well, that reminded me of a time when this happened to me. Or maybe they just want to, share something else that they felt was important. So it's a really great way to get the group to start to appreciate one another, to really listen fully to what the other person has to say, and to do that in a non-judgmental way. So you're not allowed to debate or to say that, no, that's wrong, or I don't agree with it. That's not part of a dialogue. So it's really important to have the rules for the dialogue, and just to teach people how to really be considerate, how to take in new information. Maybe it goes against what they previously thought, but we ask them, we request them. These are the rules that Cindy's coming up with. But what we do is we request them to, really reflect on what they heard. So perhaps they might start to think differently about how they previously thought about something. So the dialogue is a great, great tool, but the stop, write, reflect, and dialogue, we use it a lot to, and to make sure that everyone gets a chance to be heard, and that other people learn how to fully listen to other people, not be in such a hurry to say what they want to say, and to kind of learn from the group. It's a wonderful tool. All right. And these are the rules. Thanks, Cindy. We have so much, we could go on and on, but you can actually post this. I don't know. I think Cindy's might be able to send you some of the rules or some of the tools, but what I do is post this on a flip chart. Sometimes I even draw those little symbols and then remind people, like, okay, so let's go back to our dialoguing rules. We're not here to judge anyone else. We want to encourage open and honest communication. we're not going to ping pong, we always have these ping pong conversations. It kind of drives me crazy where I'll go, oh, I went shopping and I went out to lunch and I had this great meal. And then my friends will go, yeah, and I went out to dinner and it was really great too. They're not willing to spend a little bit of time in my world. So you might even say that. Let's not play ping pong, but allow yourself to ask people questions so that you could learn a little bit more about what they're thinking and what they experienced, rather than start to, do a one-upmanship or try to add to the story by telling what you did. And I also like to, say, I really loved what you said. That really made me, it resonated with me, and it made me think about this. And it's not a forced dialogue, so you have the right to remain silent. So what we do is we just kind of use silence really to encourage people to speak. You tell them what a dialogue is, you explain the rules, and then you say, okay, would anybody like to be first? And we're not going to call on people. We're just, if you have something to say, please go ahead and say it. One time I was in a dialogue for a whole day. A lady was telling us she was going to write a book. She was a professor, and she wanted us to dialogue on chaos and how it intersects with business today. And this was a long time ago. It was through the IAF. And I thought, oh my God, I know nothing about the chaos theory. I don't even know what to say. And I thought, well, I'm just going to be silent until everyone else starts to talk. All of a sudden, here I am, I'm speaking up and I say something, and the people go, that's so profound, Nancy. I really appreciate what you said. It made me think of, this, and this. And while we were dialoguing, we had scribes who were silent. I think there were about 8 of them. They were writing down what we were saying and putting them on a large wall. And then after we were exhausted, obviously, we had lunch, we broke for lunch, we came back, but they sorted all the cards into categories. And then they went through the cards and they asked, do we want to add anything or any questions? And by the end of the day, Lori Fitzgerald, her name was, she's from the University of Colorado. She was able to take that information to start to put a framework together for her research on chaos theory in business. So that's how it works. I just thought you might like to know a little bit more about how to use it.
Yeah, can I add in too? I've been the scribe in that because I've done work even in our community here in Southwest Florida on visual graphic facilitation and graphic recording. And actually we have a training coming up with the folks from Grove who have pioneered this technique, but I have used that in that same kind of way where I've been standing in the background with markers, I'm taking notes, but using pictures to help summarize what people are saying. And then we can use that in the group process to reflect back on what had been said and where we had been. And I found it to be a very effective tool for, like you said, scribing out those kinds of dialogues and helping to keep conversations moving. So just another little tool that we have a free training coming up on that or in that space at GIODN. So check that out moving forward. All right, Nancy, are we done with this? Or Patty have something to add?
I want to build on that, and we can go to the next one because I think it's going to take us into that. But actually, I think you're going to do the question set first. That's such a critical role of the facilitator, is to be able to capture what's going on, because if you don't do that, you will lose it, because people won't remember. So capturing that information and then making sure you transcribe it and share it with the members is just absolutely critical to keep moving your group forward.
Yeah.
So
yeah, don't throw things out. Keep a historical that you can always go back to, and that honors everybody's ideas. So you want to honor. We might have only picked 3, but we're going to save all the other ones, and we may need to go back to them. So if we go through the ideas, we find out they're not going to work and sometimes they don't for whatever reason, we'll go back and revisit the other ideas that were shared. So save everything as a historical.
Absolutely. Great. So we're moving a little now on to the planning, and I'll just briefly start this section on planning is just to let everybody know there are an amazing amount of tools for planning. I am just going to share one because we actually have additional tools to share in other spaces, but I wanted to share one in particular that I have used in this kind of community organizing and community research space that I've been developing over the past 10 years of my work and research here in Southwest Florida. With groups of people. I have used this tool, which I've just called the community question set. It actually has its origins in community dialogue for collective impact, which is where we're trying to come around shared goals from the Harwood Institute is kind of, I've evolved it further than where they had started it, but I have used this in everything from, like you see in the picture here, with groups of women and girls across Southwest Florida to help us understand what they think and feel. I've used it across rural communities, helping them to devise their economic development plan. I've used it with student groups to understand what's going on in the schools better. And you could tailor the questions slightly for these purposes, but it ends up being a really nice way to structure a dialogue to move you towards planning. And actually the latter parts of it, or the middle parts here, the challenge and the change, you can actually, and what I do in my work a lot of times is you categorize them, as you've already heard Patty and Nancy talk about, and then you start to crystallize them into goals and plans. And it's all based on the groups of people that you work with, what they really want and feel. So the way that I usually do it, there's a couple different ways that I implement it. You see this group here, we actually put the questions on those papers. And I gave all of the participants in this group the opportunity, their sticky notes, and they added their thoughts and their responses to each one of the questions. And then we got back together and then we talked about it. And so this is part of the action research model that we use as well, but there's these cycles of action and reflection. So it's kind of working through the individual thought and then bringing it up to the group. And so that there's that honoring and respecting what people, the wisdom that individual people have, but then working to cast shared stories and shared understanding of circumstances by facilitating a group dialogue. And these are particularly important components when you're talking about community level change, because each person or each from different neighborhoods or different communities are going to think certain things or have certain understandings about things, and they may not be the same as others. So having those cycles of coming in small group or individual thought and then bringing it back to a larger group, that process is going to be extremely important. The questions that I use here, luckily for me, I had them completely memorized because I've done this so much, but I start off with the question, what story do you tell? And that's specifically reflecting back on your community. So what do you tell people? When I'm from Fort Myers, what does it mean? And sometimes people are very, banal and happy. Sometimes they have really negative views of their community. And both of those things are valid. What I often do with this is I go back and do qualitative coding and trend analysis from it. And I actually look to say, okay, well, when I asked, 200 people about their community, 75% of them had a negative, the story they tell is negative, right? And so that gives us just a little barometer of kind of where people are at. And then I followed up with the second question. So, there's the kind of story that you tell everybody, but then it's what's really going on. And that's where you start to dig into what's going on in communities and neighborhoods. And this one has rendered the most amazing data, some incredibly heartbreaking stuff, people telling us about sexual abuse or drug abuse or discriminatory actions against them. But also on the other side, this has rendered an amazing amount of data of what I usually describe as like latent talents, right? So especially I've noticed it in communities that oftentimes they have this, like there's like a negative thing that they feel or they talk about outside in the community. But what they really want to know is they want everybody to know that actually they have value. Actually, and I was working with a group of students in particular who this is what they had said. It's like, we want everybody to know that we're good musicians and artists and good students. I know that everybody thinks that we're the worst school in the area, but we're not. We have value. And so, I mean, I'm even getting I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, to be honest, because it's it's a simple little question, but once you kind of open up that dialogue, you can get this incredible range of thoughts of where people really are. Those two questions serve to prime the next part, which are a little bit more let's call them technocratic, okay? So you talk about what challenges do you face? What challenges do you face in your life, or what challenges do you face at school, depending on the context? And this is where people will start to really, tell you, okay, these are the issues, these are the barriers they face, right? Then you challenge them with the next question is that what changes do you want to see related to those challenges? Or you can even open it up and say, what changes do you want to see in your community more broadly? It's a little bit better, I would say, for planning if you can connect the challenges and changes, but that's not always where the dialogue happens. And you just, as a facilitator in this space, you're just kind of going along. But those are the two things that are, like I said, the bread and butter of the planning component of this tool, because you can directly take those and start to build action plans off of them. The second to last question there is, who do you trust to make change? This is also an incredibly important question to ask in a community setting, because it can help you actually identify people who you can work with that particular group to enact the change, right? So what we found in a lot of the research across Southwest Florida here is that there's not a lot of trust in the government. There are trust sometimes in individual leaders, but not necessarily overall. Or there's trust in the school. We found a lot of people trust the school. So if you have a program or you're looking to initiate change, you probably are going to want to have the school at the table because they are seen as a trusted person within that community. And this is going to vary depending on the communities, but it really is telling as to the nature of the relationship, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to embark upon a change initiative where somebody who is seen as an authority in that change initiative is not trusted by the community. That's a recipe for disaster, like straight off the bat, right? But so this kind of helps you to get that understanding of what's going on in the community. And the last question in this community question set is, what are you willing to do? I always add that on because, first of all, it helps to it gives me an opportunity to tell the people that I work with that I'm not a miracle worker. I cannot guarantee that everything we talked about today will happen. What I can tell you is I can help to share your story and bring your voice out, which is, if you've ever heard my campaign pitch, this is where I take the report to the leaders and say, this is what the people in the community want and what they said. But it also helps to empower the people sitting around the table for this, because that they have the ability to do something. Now, they may not be able to, change any regulation that's within the city themselves, but they can make a call to the city council to do that. Or they can, if they really want a community center in their neighborhood, they can start putting together the plans or start raising money or start connecting with the organizations to make that a reality. And that's absolutely what's happened as a result of this work that I've done via this community question set. But it also gives an opportunity to galvanize the people who are there to take an active role in the change, which I think is really important. So we don't always make it like the people in the community are just demanding that this other group of people do something and it's hands off. It has to work on building the relationship, and that's why we have the trust component in there to talk about how we can, build that. And I saw a question come in here. I don't know if anybody saw that. I sometimes lose my bar at the top here.
Maybe they do. Maybe they have some questions because we gave them a lot of information in the last hour. So maybe people have some questions for us before we move on.
Yeah.
I love that. I really love that tool, Cindy. That was rich.
Thank you. Okay, it was just Angie saying that she has to leave now. Thanks, Angie. So if anybody anybody has any questions right now, you can raise your hand. There's like a raise the hand function, I believe, somewhere. or you could just unmute yourself or put it in the box. All right, I'll keep monitoring because up next, I believe that we have some additional information.
Cindy, before we go, I just want to make a comment because these questions are just amazing. And as I look at them, they fit in perfectly into the focused conversation model, because you're getting people to reflect, react. You're getting people to look at things objectively, the facts. You're getting people to interpret what's going on, and you're getting them to take action and make decisions. So I just wanted, so this is grounded in theory, and that's why it works.
Absolutely.
Well done. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, good. So, and Patty, we're going to pass it over to you now. And again, anybody else who's on the call, add in the box if you want to raise your hand, or just, you know, you can unmute too. Then we'd love to hear from you on this. And we're going to give you some opportunity here at the end to ask some additional questions. But Patty, go ahead. We're going to hand it over to you to talk a little bit more about some additional tools for acting.
Great. Thanks, Cindy. And I will tell you, there is so much that's packed into this. This could probably take at least a day to teach. But let's start off with some basic tools. And I kind of got into it a little bit with ground rules. So one of the things that a great tool to get a lot of creative ideas in a short period of time is brainstorming. So there is one. Do you hear me now?
Yeah, Patty, sorry.
Okay, I didn't think I just got muted. But anyway, just back to brainstorming. Few rules. Brainstorming, it's all about getting a lot of ideas. We're not judging them, so we just want lots and lots of ideas. So the purpose, and in a short period of time. So everybody needs to be involved. Oh, thank you. The way it works is we have some rules, and the rules are, there are no rules. Quantity, there are no bad ideas. We need the facilitator to be writing those down. We always start with a focus question or a goal. So it might be, the focus question could be, what are the qualities that are important in a community leader? And everybody starts, you know, talking about what those are. I think it's a good idea sometimes to just kind of go around the room. This way you make sure that everybody gets to participate. A rule for that is that people can pass if they want to. So then we take all these ideas, we're writing them down. There's no judging that's going on. Then we take all those ideas, and you're going to have a lot of them. And I will say you can do this in around 15 minutes, come up with these ideas. Then you're going to group them. And that's the fun part. Now, the way I've been doing my brainstorming is that I've been actually having people write them on cards. I know I talked about writing them down, but a very effective way is to have each person write their idea on a card. Then we take those cards and we put them up on the wall. So typically we'll have sticky wall, or we'll have tape on those cards, and they're plastered all over the wall. The beauty of it is we get everybody, the whole group up there, and we've done this with a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people. So sometimes you might have groups come in and out, but say you're working with 20 people, you get those 20 people up there and you ask them to silently group the cards. So the way that works is everyone starts moving those cards around. Of course, they're going to put those cards in similar groups. And explain that. Similar groups, just organize it. There's no right answer or wrong answer, but it's what the group believes. And you'll see people, you know, someone might put it in one group, then someone else moves it to the other. You know, sometimes we might agree to have them write another card so it's in both groups, but nonetheless, nobody's talking. When it finally quiets down, then we go back to those groups and we start naming them. So if we look at all those ideas, let's name them, as well as let's look at them and let's get duplications together. Let's get, if anyone's unclear about something, we'll have the person that came up with that idea talk about what that is, so everybody knows what we come up with. So that's how we start grouping. So Cindy, let's go on to the next one. Yeah, there we go. So here we go. We've got all our information group. So now what we're going to do at some point in time, we want to figure out, you know, how are we going to make decisions, right? So we have to figure that out. And one of the ways that we do that, and this is particularly important when we're doing community organizing, we want people to agree to whatever it is that they want to do. So we literally will ask everybody, we'll say, you know what, this is consensus. It's not about what your most favorite idea, it's what you can live with. So we literally go around the room, how do you feel about these ideas? And people, you know, all give their opinion on it. We make sure that we are testing for facts, not opinion. If anyone doesn't agree, we're going to ask them why. So these are kind of the rules. We also have a technique that we use, a down and dirty technique that allows us to quickly determine if there is consensus. And that would be, that's it, Cindy, 2 ways. One is voting. So back to my brainstorm ideas. You might have a whole load of those ideas, and now you want to figure out what the best ones are. So you might even go to your groups and you might say, all right, everyone, we're going to use dots, right? So I give everybody those little sticky dots and everybody gets, say, 5 dots, especially when you have a big group. And we're going to ask you to take those 5 dots and put them on your favorite ideas. And so we do 1 round of that. Then we take those ideas where we got the most votes and we give them, we say, all right, now we're going to do it again. We're going to have that second vote and we're going to pare that list down even more. Second thing, only now we're going to give them less votes. And then we do the same thing with the third. So we give them 3 votes again. Bottom line is we're going to have 3 top ideas. That allows us to kind of take a long list and get those ideas that people are most passionate about. That's when I'm going to go to consensus and I'm going to say, all right, what do you guys think about that? Fist to 5, a great way to kind of poll everybody. The way it works is, if you throw a fist up, that means you can't live with the decision. You're going to block it or leave it. 1 finger means you're not really that excited about it, but you're not going to block it. That person's obviously not going to do a whole lot. 2 fingers, I'm not excited, but I'm going to do some work. 3 fingers, that's what you're shooting for. 3, 4, and 5. I think it's okay. I'm going to get involved. 4 fingers, I think it's good. I'm going to work hard to support it. And fist, I think the decision is great. And this is the clincher here. I may leave the group if it's not made. So you literally ask everyone, okay, everyone, after you explain how this works, put in your vote. And you're going to kind of line people up according to what they think. And then you're going to have the discussion. You really want to, you know, have those discussions around those outliers, because that's going to tell you how people feel about things. Sometimes people miss information, and they don't hear about it until we do that fist to five. And that's when we start really nailing, discussing, and dialoguing about the important of that particular decision or that item. So that's a little bit about fist to five. Great activity to use. All right. So I think I don't know, Nancy, if you were doing that, but I'm going to keep on because I just love this, because it's going to be all about action. And one of the things that Cindy was talking about, when she talked about, doing that, the drawing and the graphic facilitation, is capturing things. Throughout this whole meeting time, you need to have some sort of a flip chart or some sort of paper where you are copying down what a group is agreeing to. Because the beautiful thing is, during the whole meeting, people are going to be talking about actions. So you'll be writing those down, and you want to make sure that you assign somebody is going to take responsibility. We're going to decide, when we're going to do it, how we're going to do it. And by the way, we're going to put that whole action plan together. The beauty of it is you get commitment there, you document it, and you start finding where the energy is upon the, in regard to the things that were identified. You can brainstorm till the cows come home, but unless you have consensus and you have actions, you're not going to be able to move forward. So this is just a wonderful, wonderful thing. And here's a great template. Yep, that's great, Cindy. Thank you. So that's going to be the goals that you come up with, the various actions that are going to be necessary to achieve those goals, who's going to, we'll get back to roles in a second, how you're going to measure them, like all of the deliverables that will come as a result of the actions, how long it's going to take you, and throughout the whole progress till it gets done, you're going to monitor it. Where are we? Are we halfway done? Are we meeting our timeline? Are there any issues there? And by the way, each of those actions will have somebody who's responsible. A name, and sometimes there are going to be people not only are responsible, but there are going to be a sponsor involved, someone that might support it, or somebody that maybe that's not their role to do it, but we need to keep them informed as to what's going on. Any issues that come along, this is a long-term effort. So you want to keep control of those issues and make sure you resolve them, accomplish your milestones. Those are your tasks that you get done. Think about budgets. What is this going to cost? I love funding, right? Funding's critical. And as we said, what the current status is. This is just a great template for you to use. Okay.
Yes, thanks, Patty. And now let's hand it over to Nancy to tell us a little bit about the feedback and debriefing. So Nancy, you're on mute, so you're gonna have to, I'll unmute you. There you go. All right.
So once you go through, you have your meeting and you come up with your actions, or perhaps you're reviewing your action plan to see what's been accomplished. I really love this tool called giving feedback. So you want to give, what you want to do, well, it's not really, what you want to do is you want to ask for feedback. Like, we would like to ask you, how are we doing? What did you get out of it? Things like that. We'll do that at the end. But that's basically really important, is to ask for constructive, helpful, useful feedback, and get everyone to talk about what we did, how we did it, what worked, what didn't work, what was important, what are they going to remember, and to always end the session with feedback. And the reason this is such a great tool is that if you've ever been in a meeting before and you go, and you don't do this, people leave the room and go, didn't that meeting suck? I couldn't even believe it. We never even had a chance to talk or anything, or the leader did all the talking. And then they go and gossip about how bad the meeting was. This gives you a chance to get balanced feedback, what worked and what didn't work, and what we should have done differently, and how we should, maybe even how we should behave differently the next time. So that's the whole value of constructive feedback and doing a feedback debrief. I think there's another slide though, right? I'm not sure. We just do a debrief at the end. Yeah, every time we end a training program or a meeting. You could even do a plus delta. That means you could ask them, you could put you could come up with what worked, and you could you could write a list down, and you could say what didn't work what didn't work in this meeting. You can ask people to put a number value 1 to 7, like if that didn't work, how would you rate it? And you could add it up. And so if the what worked column is greater than the what didn't work, you can say, well, let's just, talk a little bit more about that. It looks like most people said here we did a pretty good job and that they liked what happened. But if you look at this other side and look at what people said didn't work, maybe we need to incorporate that into our next meeting and what we need to do to improve. And then finally we say, well, what would you do differently next time? What should we do differently next time? And also I like another question, add this. What are your takeaways? What will you be able to use right away? And that way you can hear about what people actually learned and what they're going to remember. Our learning retention is really short. You're going to remember maybe 60% of what we talked about right after the session, but by the end of the day, it's going to drop down to about 25%. Me, I'm probably only going to remember 10%. That's why I have to take notes. So anyways, those are 2 really good tools, asking for feedback, constructive feedback, meaning both positive and feedback for improvement. Notice I'm not using any negative terms. And also then debriefing what they got out of it, were their expectations met, and to carry forward what we need to do differently next time. 2 really powerful tools.
Thank you. All right, good. So as we're coming up to time, and we do want to leave some time for that feedback component, I just wanted to kind of round out with some additional tips for you as if you're engaging with a brand new group or kind of stepping into that community organizing space. What are some additional things you can do around the technical side of that organizing? And I'll tell you that I actually just walked through a lot of this with a very brand new youth-led initiative, and we had some pretty good success, I would say, given the short nature of it. But these are things that are kind of, they sometimes obvious, but they're really important. So the first thing is give yourself a name, right? Things that have names are important. By the way, also extremely important when you're dealing with the media, so that they know what to call you and your group. Okay, so if you have found yourself and your group of friends and you are ready to rock and roll and make change in your community and you haven't joined another organization, give yourself a name. Even if you do at some point in time get involved in a larger group, you can still have your own identity. It will help you as you're making these changes. Think about what your initial messaging is and use some of these tools here around your vision and mission, and then maybe coming down with a couple of goals, because those will then start to become your message. Really focus in on what you're trying to accomplish and what you're doing to accomplish it. And if you can crystallize those things, again, that's going to enable you to talk more specifically with the media. That's going to be able to allow you to communicate more broadly with people who would be interested in joining you and galvanizing support around whatever type of change initiative you have. So that's kind of then, once you have your name and your message, you can continue to communicate, connect, and recruit. And so having those things, once, the name gives you some validation that you're a real thing, the message will resonate with people, and then having that call to action will help. So if you're organizing rallies or protests, letter writing campaigns, whatever it is, you need to have some structure around it. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to get people around your cause. Recently, most specifically, Facebook and Instagram have been used very well for organizing. You can add on additional things once you have a core group of people, like Slack. Some people, especially people around the world, use WhatsApp quite a lot for organizing. I will even tell you that at the very beginning of the coronavirus, I was sitting in a webinar with Brookings Institute, and they had been coordinating with cities around the world on their response they all did it via WhatsApp. And it wasn't the most organized thing, because WhatsApp, if you've ever been on it, is just like kind of like cavalcade of information. But it was the fastest, most efficient way for cities around the world to share information as well as best practices on how they were addressing the coronavirus. So, you know, I think sometimes when you're in this space, especially in the here and now around community organizing, getting the message out any way that you can and coordinating any way that you can is more effective than waiting for the perfect, right? So don't let the, you know, don't let the good interrupt the perfect, or don't wait for the perfect to interrupt the good, however that silly saying goes. But the point is, you know, when you're doing it quick and fast, you find people where they are, you galvanize your support, and you start to work through those mechanisms. Facebook groups, Instagram chat groups, WhatsApp chat groups, these are all really effective ways to begin your preliminary organization. You can think later on a website or a formal, you know, communications channel, but if you have people where they are, you're going to be able to have early wins like we talked about and move forward with your initiative. So just quickly, Patti, can you tell us a little bit about some of these disruptive behaviors? Because this may happen, especially if you are enacted in a group where you have infiltrators or provocateurs.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a few things, constructive feedback. The one thing I always have to say, use the ground rules for that, and don't pull anybody out individually or shame anyone. Obviously, if people are talking offline, you can, you know, say something about, oh, we all we have ground rules, but never embarrass anyone. That's really important. The other thing, and let me go to the other side, if somebody is really being disruptive, you may have to stop the action at some point and talk to that person offline. That's really important. And everybody's watching that as well. So there's an expectation as a facilitator, you are going to manage the group. The other thing is, we talked about the ground rules. You definitely want ground rules, and you definitely want a process. So we talked about an agenda. You need an agenda for your meeting, and your focus is going to be not so much on what's being said, but rather capturing what's being said and the process, making sure that people are following the agenda, making sure that people are active, making sure that you are capturing things throughout the whole process. Make sure that you reward, as we say, the appropriate supportive behaviors, recognize that, acknowledge that. And with those big groups, they don't always work. So take advantage of putting small groups together, breakout groups, have them work on a task, and then report back to the big group. That's very, very effective. We talk about, again, if there's an issue, there's some conflict, call that time out, take a break, maybe do a quick little activity where, you know, some fun activity. Also, if you can work with a co-facilitator with these bigger groups, you're going to be much better off. Because the facilitator can be writing, you can be managing the process, and we talked about a debrief. Always, always, always conduct that debrief. What went well? What will we do differently the next time? So just a few tips for the disruptions. They will happen. It's okay.
Being prepared. All right. So I want to give the ha-ha, and then I want to give everybody the opportunity to come back. So I'm just going to skip here. I wanted to just say before we close, you know, thanks to Nancy and Patti for coming here. Thank you to everybody who joined this session. We wanted to leave you with this kind of like, yes, thank you. It's time to get to work. You can stay strong, and don't forget to connect with other local organizations and national organizations working in the space that you're looking for change, right? You're not alone. You may be starting with a group of people who are really passionate about the issue, but look for where you can have synergy, and you can do it. Always keep in mind, by the way, there's a space for you. there's a space for you. Just because somebody else is working in that same space doesn't mean that you don't have to do work there. But joining up those efforts so you're not clashing is going to be important. But there is a role. That youth group that I was working with here, working to remove the statue of General Lee, they did a organized campaign and the rally and the letter writing. The NAACP came into the same space. And, you know, I encourage them to partner with them so that they can both fill different roles. So there's always opportunity. There's no such thing as competition when it comes to change in this. There's enough work for everyone. We just have to find that space. So keep the faith in that, right? And we'll leave with the how can we support you, but let's back up to the ask the expert, share your questions, share your idea, debrief, what's going on with our folks who are on the line. Thank you so much for joining us. But anybody want to share your thoughts on that? You can put it in the comment, the chat box, if you don't want to unmute, or you can unmute yourself and we can have a conversation here. So how are we going here? Nancy, what other questions what might you ask?
I see Martha and Carmen and Jesse and Carrie and Temmie and Julio. How did this work for you? What did you get out of it?
Well, hello everyone. This is Marta. Thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be here. Of course, seeing some of my favorite people here in this presentation, but most of all, the fact that I'm able to listen to all this wisdom and all this experience thrown into a few slides, and it's just helping me to, you know, get in my aha moment right here. I'm just going to give you an example. I work with an organization that I feel very dearly on the cause and what we're doing, and it's all about social justice and bringing the underrepresented communities of the United States, but also abroad, to the sport and to the sport of swimming, and also to be able to save lives through that. So this time during the quarantine that I had a little bit of slow time in my own, I was able to work with the organization directly, and we went through this process of writing the goals and the new strategic planning the strategic plan for the organization. So I actually saw one slide that I'm going to bring in because it really encompasses what we did with the group. And it's at the beginning, Nancy, thank you so much for creating the community change. A very first, I think it was the first one. It's create urgency, the 8 steps.
The Cotter model.
Yeah, the Cotter model. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, like you guys mentioned, the group, sometimes nonprofit organizations forget that part, forget where they are and where they are starting from. They're starting from zero. A lot of these organizations are grassroots organizations, right? And they don't see where they're gonna go. They just think that we had a bunch of doers, you know, we wanna change something. We are the agents of change. We have all this emotion and motivation, but we don't see where the organization is going or how is this gonna be a sustained momentum. And I think the Cutler model is the one that really fit into putting people in perspective. And it took a few years for the diversity and aquatics, the organization I'm with, is to figure out that part, to finally where we have now a model that we can actually say, we're here and this is where we're going and this is how we're gonna be growing. And so a lot of things that I saw today totally resonate. I wish I had been able to engage some of my people, the diversity and aquatics, into this presentation. So if you guys do it again, I will bring you a bunch of people to this presentation because I think it's an eye opener.
Thanks, Martha. What about Carmen? Carmen, can you speak?
Myself here. Hi.
Hi, Carmen.
I didn't realize how much I already knew. So I was in that category where it was, well, I don't know. It's been a while, but I certainly want to thank all of you for everything you brought to the table. More than anything, the parking lot, I forgot about that. It's been a while. And thank you so much. And I do hope you do this again, and with possibly going to other areas. And I will bring in people also. I will try.
Okay, and maybe give us your give us your feedback. What what else we could have done? Or hey, Jesse, how are you doing? You were the first person.
Hey, hi. Thank you guys for doing this. This has been really, really helpful. And similar to Carmen, I was like, oh, I like a lot of this is just very common sense stuff. Like anybody who's worked in a nonprofit or with schools, like this stuff applies across the board. So that was really, it made me feel more confident and like, okay, I'm not so off base in this. I'm one of the co-founders of the newly formed Activist Protection League of Southwest Florida, which our mission is to provide training and safety guidelines for activists to help them protect themselves. And we are finding that we're getting a lot of people not really, well, we're trying to figure out the best way to communicate what it is we're doing. People think that we're out there to organize protests, which is not what we're looking for. We're just trying to keep the people organizing protests safe. So can you guys speak to a little bit about how to get that messaging and everything that you're, like what it is that your values are, your mission, your goal? How do you repeatedly get that out to your audience or the people that are asking you for help?
I think you just have to have a strong vision and mission statement and define your values, like what's important to all of you. And then everything that you communicate has to speak to your vision and your mission and your values.
Yeah.
Be consistent to that, we can talk to you more about it offline, but
okay,
that's the first, that's the first step. Good luck with that. That's really great.
Thanks. I'm going to get a website together soon, which I think will help, because then every time everybody comes to a question, I can be like, let me refer you to our website, which explains that we don't do what you're asking us to do. So.
Well, you also just use a Facebook group first if you want to.
That's
and then that'll help you to grow your website.
Absolutely. Yeah, right now it's mostly Facebook, and it's been a lot of interest really fast and a lot of criticism also, which is totally fair, because I mean, who put us in charge, so totally fair with that. So I just want to make sure like that we're on top of that messaging, making sure people understand what we're here for. So yes, I appreciate this so much. You guys, the parking lot thing was really helpful, actually. I want to figure out like a digital version of that.
Oh, that, yeah, right.
My only response is repeat, 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 and that's it. It's like, so once your organization itself has crystallized, this is our vision, this is our mission, these are our goals, you just take that and you put it in your marketing over and over and keep it super simple. Okay. This is what we do. Right. This is what we do every single time, every media interest, every time that you speak, every time that you start a post. The more that you can put that out, the more clarity you will get back for you. And then you can have your other FAQs and whatever, but I swear, like the messaging is just has to be repeated. If you've ever heard me do my campaigns pitch, every single time, small business owner, our water, our health, every single time, it's because it's the repetition that gets out there, and that's the only way to combat the miscommunication.
Great, absolutely. That makes
sense. I think this is hard to do too, but it's hard to formulate, but once you do it, you really got it. It's about what value do we bring? Mm-hmm. What value do we bring? Because that speaks to people's heart.
Yeah.
And when you can appeal to someone's heart, then they're going to remember it. And, so we didn't hear from, how about Temi or Julio? Did you want to? Good luck, Jesse. I'm trying to honor everyone's time. I know we're going over, but Temi or Julio, did you want to?
Well, thank you, Nancy. I just want to thank you, the three of you, for sharing all this wisdom, years of experience together, just for us to learn from you. And I apologize not putting my camera on, but I've been having internet issues, so I apologize for that. I'm afraid that if I turn it on, I might lose connectivity with you. I just want to thank you, because I definitely will have many tools here to add to my belt from now on, and it's applicable to different fields. So that's the great value of this. It's not exclusively for communities or organizations, but it's as long as you work with people, all these tools here would be applicable. in facilitating discussions or meetings, whatever. So I just want to thank you all for sharing all this value.
Excellent. Well, maybe if we do it the next time, we'll reach out to everyone and say, what are the topics that you'd like us to present? So we'll make it a little bit different next time. But this was just like, we wanted to start and add value wherever we could and give people some basic tools that they could get organized and they could use in groups. But thank you, Julio. What about Temi?
Hi, everyone. Oh.
Hi.
Hi. I second Julio. I never thought about using COTIER for community organizing. So when I saw that, I was actually quite surprised. I was like, why didn't I think to do that? I know how to use the method. I've used it in other instances, but didn't think to use it necessarily for community organizing. So that was really eye-opening, and seeing, like Julio said, there are applications for this in various fields. Absolutely. Also, you were definitely correct about being the salesman. I think that when it comes to wanting to do nonprofit work or charity work, for people who aren't necessarily in the field, it is hard to become that salesman, that networking person, without maybe, I guess, putting yourself out there and trying to figure out the message and trying to figure out how you can do that. It can be very difficult for some, at least I'm speaking for myself, when it comes to trying to get people to give you money for something that really isn't about you. It's about other people, getting them to care, getting them to see from your perspective why there's urgency, why this is important.
Absolutely. And just sending a letter to friends and colleagues and finding out who's your supporters, just ask them to donate $10, $5. You know, it all counts, and people feel good about that. I always donate to all the dog rescues. I'm sending it out on Facebook, hoping other people, that's one of mine that, you know, and it's just, they just simply make the ask. And if you can't do it, you can't do it. So, but no one, my mom always said, the word no never really hurt anybody. So you got to ask.
No, your mom and my dad does that.
Your dad said the same thing.
Yeah, he says the same thing. He'll be like, you'll never know if you don't ask. Absolutely. That's kind of his mentality. And and so I try to put that in my life, but I don't necessarily apply it everywhere, because sometimes there are feelings of, is this the appropriate time? Is this the appropriate place? With professional people that you know, is it okay to kind of, this isn't necessarily the right word, but spam them with your various interests or things that you would like to push forward? So finding that balance is, I guess, what makes it hard.
Right. Maybe offer them something first to see who is interested, and then after that, ask them if they're willing to donate something.
You know what? And that's a really good idea.
Yeah. All right.
Wow. I'll also say that it just on that note is that I really encourage you, as if you're like with a newer organization or you're kind of stepping into this space, really do with your team or the group that you're working with this kind of preliminary stuff of like, what's our mission, vision, what are we trying to accomplish? Because you don't really necessarily want to get into the situation where you're raising money and you have no idea what you're actually raising money for. Exactly. And then because there's a whole like slew of like legal responsibilities that come with that as well. Sometimes people just feel the moment and donate to something, but I think if you really want to be good stewards of community change, do the work around the structure of what you're trying to do before you step into the fundraising space. Because once you have those kind of ducks in a row, then it will be much easier for you to fundraise effectively and then be able to spend that money effectively and build the trust to continue your work forward into the future.
Yeah, you have to be able to administrate it once you have the funds. And remember that you're responsible too, as the leader and the whatever group that you're forming, you have a fiduciary responsibility.
Yep.
Well, great conversation.
I was just gonna say one more thing, probably that could be added into this, especially because it's the topic is community change, and then which will be something. Why are we doing the community change? I know you showed us a tool on how we can get the involvement, everybody to buy in by answering those questions, but the overall process here, it has to have some sort of evidence. And I think you all of you, we have the experience with working in these community groups that they need to have some sort of evidence-based, I'm using the terminology, right?
Right.
It's evidence-based cases where we can actually see how these organizations can make an impact. How do we as a community can make an impact based on that research? And I think if you add that component to this presentation, Nancy, something like we were talking back in the days with Gabriel in Africa and so on, how they can become objective, credible organizations, and what does that mean, the evidence-based component of the organization?
Thanks, Martha. That's a good one. We'll call on you to help us with that one.
Okay, I'd love to.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow, what a great group. Well, let's stay connected. Let us know how you're doing too, and also what else you might need from us. So really appreciate that. Cindy.
That's kind of the end of our show here, and a little bit long because we had some great conversation. Did want to let you know that we'll be sending all the registrants to this. We'll send you the follow-up video as well as a couple tool handouts related to the topics you see here, as well as the PDF of the slides. We'd love for you to stay connected. Earlier, there's Nancy and Patty's contact information at Institute of OD is there. If you are interested in more in-depth learning on this, we do encourage you to check out instituteod.com for their longer course trainings and certifications in organization development, leadership development, executive coaching, and there's a lot of different places where you can continue your education on this. That absolutely does cross over, by the way, into community and nonprofit management spaces. And if you're interested in connecting with me as well, I'm at cindy@banyaiconsulting.com. I am the official convener of this, but really partnering with my friends and colleagues at the Institute of Organization Development to provide this service to our communities across the United States to help, galvanize the things that some of you, we already knew a lot of this stuff, but realizing that we can apply it to community change and really, take that to the next level. So beyond just the initial energy and moving it forward into systemic change, because that's really what we in our hearts believe is needed. So thank you everybody for joining us here today. Thank you, Dr. Nancy Zentis and Patti Dammann for sharing your knowledge. And thanks to all of our participants for being here and for doing the work that you do out in our communities every single day. So thank you so much, everybody. And we'll end here for today. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Bye. As soon as I figure out how to end it. All right. Bye-bye.
Right.
Good job.